Alrighty, welcome back everybody to the third week of our Elk Grove Library Summer Technology programs being offered here at the library in a virtual format, obviously. It's the third week of our programs where the past couple of weeks we've been doing a bunch of cool things, talking about video editing, gaming hours, and today going to be continuing the third week of our Introduction to Programming course, where we are learning about the fundamentals of the programming language of Python, developing mindset of what computer science is, what we can do with it, and also brushing up our skills and learning how to type out some code as well, making our way towards next week too. As always, guys, thank you so much for coming out here today. It seems like we got a great and large crowd of people, which is always great to see. Some new faces in the crowd as well. So without any further ado, let's get started. You guys know who I am. My name is Rayaan Siddiqi, guys. I recently graduated from James B. Conan High School here in the Schaumburg town area. And this upcoming fall, I will be an incoming freshman at the University of Illinois at Chicago. Some things about me: I am an author of a novel called The Switch Up. It is available at the Elk Grove Library along with a bunch of libraries across the Illinois state area about a student's journey throughout the world of high school and how he comes to learn about his passion for technology. It's a great read. I know some of us here have also read it. Be sure to check it out. Available on Amazon as well, The Switch Up. On the side, I like to run a sports talk show with some of my friends on YouTube called Buzzer to Buzzer, and really like to use my programming skills to make unique impacts and do some cool things, whether it be apps, making websites. Goes to show you that there's a bunch of possibilities with the skills we are learning. So it's always great to meet you guys every week, and hopefully you guys are having a fun time with me as well. Alrighty, so you guys know how we like to get started off every single week with usually an agenda of what we're going to be tackling on any given day. And today, we're just going to do a quick recap of what we covered last week, talking about our cool fun fact of the day, learning about new terms, getting into some breakout rooms with our other folks as well, and then continuing to make the transition to typing code. We will be learning about the new concept for the day and how to type that in code. This is all in preparation for next week, where we will be actually creating a project in the fourth and final week of our Introduction to Programming course. Before we can get there, a quick recap on our Elk Grove Library programs we got going on. We got Introduction to Programming, where we are learning about the language of Python. A quick message about Introduction to Web Development. All of our July programs have been rescheduled to the fall. The dates will be announced, but this Introduction to Web Development, it will not be happening in July. It has been rescheduled. So if you were signed up, I believe there will be an email coming out soon as well to you guys. This second course of the web development has been rescheduled. We already did gaming hour last week. We got Hack Club coming up next Monday. I would highly recommend you guys come out to that. It's gonna be a lot of fun. We're gonna learn about how are certain things recommended to us. How does machine learning work? How are cars able to drive themselves? So definitely come out to that one as well. And also iMovie video editing, that has been rescheduled to our fall programs as well. So if you guys have any questions, do let me know. But just a quick note, Introduction to Web Development and iMovie video editing has been rescheduled to the fall. But the other programs, yep, getting a question about, will the other programs still be going on? Yes, so the other programs will still be going on. We're finishing out with the month of June. Next week, Introduction to Programming, along with Hack Club. So hope to get you guys there. Alrighty, and a quick message about our Google Classroom. I believe at this time we have everybody who's already joined, but if you've not, the link is in the chat. Be sure to hit that link. You just need a Google account. You have access to all of our resources, the Zoom links, the YouTube videos, the code links for each every day. Super important. Be sure to join that. But I believe by this point, all of us are good to go. Additionally, I have received some questions about what if I want to learn more about the programming language of Python. That's a great question you guys have, because over the past 2 years, I have been teaching computer science and programming at multiple areas and have a playlist here at the Schaumburg Library, which is in the chat as well, filled with many more helpful videos about programming. If you guys want to scroll down and find the videos about Python, there is a Python video, multiple Python videos explaining more in-depth concepts, which although we're not able to cover in an hour, still a great idea if you want to build up your toolbox even more. But don't worry if you don't want to, because we're still doing a pretty good job here with our technology programs and covering mostly everything. Alrighty, so that was just a quick few housekeeping items, and now let's talk about what we did last week. For those of us who were not here, I believe most of us here last week, we covered 2 new terms, those being variables and functions. Now, before I explain what those are, we'll do a quick activities with those once again. And we also got a chance to talk about why being specific to computers really matters. We had that breakout room activity where you were drawing, we had 2 partners. One partner was responsible for looking up an image. the other partner was responsible for drawing the image. Now you guys saw how being specific and telling your partner how to draw and where to draw certain shapes and lines was super important, because without those specific instructions, drawing that image would not work because it would simply not look as nice, right? So that was in a generalized activity to learn about why we have to be super specific when talking to computers, because if we don't specify something which we want them to do in a line of code, something else could happen, which is something we did not intend to happen. So that's something important to always keep in mind. And additionally, we learn how to type out variables and functions with actually typing out the code. The link to that is always in the Google Classroom, but we'll do a quick recap of that today as well. So I talked about these two terms now, variables and functions. But before I give the definition and recap what they were, I want to do a quick Python fun fact of the day. Now, last week we had a fun fact as well, learned about how Python was actually used in order to help crack COVID-19 before anybody else in the world knew about it. Today's fun fact is these companies, Uber, Netflix, Google, and Facebook, all four of these companies and many more use the coding language of Python every single day. Now, does anybody want to take a guess or a shot? Doesn't matter. It does not have to be right. Why do they think these companies use Python?
For their websites?
Andrew, 100%. Yep. Avani's saying to make it more aesthetic, easy for people to use. Definitely. Yep. It's an idea and more popular. Yep. Python is very popular and more people use these websites, right? So what's one thing in common which all four of these apps and websites have? A lot of people use them, right? How many of us here have used, let's do a quick count, Uber, the taxi app? Yep, Avni's saying they use Python to make more features, gain more money and views, definitely. How many of us here have used Netflix? Give a quick thumbs up in the reaction.
A little bit.
Okay. Yep, so we got a bunch of people. Kyle, yep, Kaya, Maha, yep. And then Google. This is a no-brainer. All of us have used Google. You know, everybody says, just Google it, right? Everyone has used Google, yep. And then how about Facebook? A bit more outdated, but maybe your parents use it or older siblings. Yep. Avni's saying no. Yeah, so the main thing is that all four of these companies, they have hundreds of millions of people using their services. Just go on Facebook or Netflix, you see thousands of different shows you can watch, right? That's a lot of data. And the reason why all these companies are using the language of Python so much is so that they can analyze all this data, which at the end of the day, Avnish said, allows them to be more cost effective, save money, and make more people aware of their product. So say I'm talking about Facebook, right? With any given account, there's so much information associated with an account, right? There's the username, there's the password, there's the email, there's the profile picture with a certain person's account, right? All this information needs to be kept track of and is usually done through a database. And in order to analyze all of this data about millions of people, Python is the way to go. We won't use a different language because Python makes analyzing all this data much more efficient. And it's why so many of these companies, you can literally search up any company and 99% sure, I would say, that they are using Python in some format, whether it be for the aesthetics and in order to make people's life more easier and make their websites much more accessible. So it goes to show you once more, at the end of the day, the stuff we're learning has a pretty near impact. Chances are whatever app you're running has some type of Python maybe incorporated with it, and 100% some type of programming language, which is pretty cool to see how what we're learning can actually be applied on an everyday basis. Alrighty, so that was this week's cool Python fun fact of the day, but now let's move on towards a quick little breakout for 5 minutes. Last week we discussed and talked about what variables and functions were. We did a little activity learning about how being specific matters as well. Today, what I want you guys to do is to go into your breakout room for 5 minutes and try to recall with your partner what were variables and what are functions. If you guys remember any analogies or any definitions of what they were, that'll be awesome. But if not, no worries. We will come back and do a review afterwards. So just give me a moment as I set these breakout rooms up. Anybody have any questions before they go or what they are going to be doing?
So you just want us to discuss what variables and functions are, right?
Correct, yep.
Okay.
All right, the rooms should be open. Alrighty, guys. So hopefully you guys had a good time in your breakout rooms. At this time, I'm just gonna call some people if you want to share any ideas of what a variable and function were. We'll start off with, I know Maria was actually given a really good definition. Maria, if you don't mind, you wanna remind us what a variable is?
Yeah, so a variable would be like defined as like a box, and then the function would be like the house of the code, basically.
Exactly. Yep. We got people in the chat. So Avani's saying functions are basically things you type out, take in the data you want, and according to your conditions, give out the result 100%. And you can use functions anywhere you want. Definitely, Avanish. We can call them wherever we would like recalling a variable. Yep. So a variable we can use throughout our program because it holds data, and a function is like a house. So let's do a quick recap on that. Yep. So Avanish telling us how to write out a function right there. So remember, function, guys, is responsible for holding all of our code. Like Maria was saying, it's a house. It's responsible for holding all the rooms, bedrooms, the furniture, right? Similarly, it holds all of our code. Avanish in the chat saying how we can write a function. We just do def, the name of the function, open and close parentheses with those 2 colons, and then we just hit enter, and then we can start coding inside. And then in a function, we can put conditionals. That's something which we'll learn about today, and many other things. So yep, function, remember, main thing is they hold all of our code. And then a recap about the variables. We talked about how variables allow us to hold data, whether it be a name, a number, or multiple numbers and names. Variables are pretty nice in that we can hold many different things. And like Maria was saying at the beginning as well, they're like a box. They hold little things, right? So they can hold trophies, they can hold old clothes, things like a box holds. Instead, a variable, it similarly holds pieces of data, like names, numbers, and booleans, which we'll be talking about soon as well. So that was a quick recap on the terms which we covered last week, just making sure that our foundation is all good to go. For this week, let's move on towards a new topic, that being something called conditionals, also known as if-else statements. Now, what are if-else statements? Well, they are essentially a way for us to make sure that we only run specific pieces of code when a certain condition is met. Now, it's probably much more easier to think about it this way, in an analogy, right? Just like we have variables, our boxes, our functions are like a house, conditional statements, they are like a stoplight. If the stoplight, we're driving on the road, right? The stoplight is green. That means the car, you keep on going. If the stoplight is red, that means, hey, I'm going to be stopping, meaning you just stop. Avani's saying conditionals are basically like conditions. Exactly. They are conditions. If a certain condition is met, then a certain piece of code will run. If a certain condition is not met, then a certain piece of code will not run. If we take a look towards the right here, we have a condition, right? We're seeing that the temperature, this line number 1, actually we can do a quick review right here. What is this line number 1? What term did we just cover today? What is it representing? The one I circled?
Variable.
Exactly. Now, Avanish, what type of variable? It's a number word.
Boolean.
Yep, it's holding a number value, right? So we have a variable right there, a temperature variable holding the value of 30. Now, this is what a conditional is. It's an if or else statement. We're saying that if the temperature is greater than 50, then print out the word alarm on. If this condition is not met, then print alarm off. Does that make sense? So we're saying that if this condition is met, then we will run whatever code is inside of here. Otherwise, we'll run whatever code is inside of here. It's very dependent on whether this condition inside is met. Anybody have any questions at all? So conditionals, pretty much like conditions. If a certain condition is met, then we will run that piece of code. Otherwise, if that condition is not met, then we will not run that code and instead something else. All right, so that was my definition and my analogy of what these conditionals and if-else statements are. What I want to do now is get you guys back in your breakout rooms, and how about you guys provide an example with your partner of where an if-else statement can be applied in real life. Think about it, you know how we thought about the stoplight example? Think about a different example of where it can be applied, and then we'll talk about that and advance them. So another 5 minutes, and here we go. I guess wait a couple of moments for everybody to get back. All right, there we go. All right. So I did get to hear some great examples of if-else statements. Anybody want to share a real life example they had?
Like if the temperature outside is like low, then turn the thermostat of like the house to up high, and then like the same opposite. You can write like a program for that using the if else statement.
Exactly, Avanish. Yep. So looking in the sense that if certain condition is met, like a temperature, if it's too hot, then you turn the AC on. If it's too cold, turn the heat on. So that's an example. Anybody else have any examples?
I'll go. I had the example of the light switch. So like, if you turn the light switch on, then the light turns on, and if you don't, then there will be no light because it's off.
Definitely. So those are great examples, and it just goes to show us how our everyday lives, they're like if-else statements. Is if something is met, some condition is met, then we do something. If it's not met, then we do something else. So it's pretty cool to see. So we learned about conditionals are. How about now we transition and just apply them to some coding and how we can type them out as well. I will be going towards our website, and I'll be dropping the link so you guys can join as well. All right, the link to the code is in the chat. If you guys would like, I would highly recommend if you want to open up your own tab so you can follow along as we code. But if not, you could join me on our website as well. Alrighty, so as we're getting on, today's focus will be typing out conditionals, aka if-else statements. So how about we make something which will tell us how well we did on a test, right? So I see somebody's already typing away. a function. So first things first is that we're going to need something to hold all of our code. So let's write out our goal will be use conditionals to tell us how well we did on a test. So first things first, we're going to need a function. We're going to need to say def. We can call our function whatever we like. Someone's already making it. Say a test. We'll just call it evaluate test score. We add the opening close parentheses and then the 2 colons. There we go. So remember, this is just us creating a function which is going to hold all of our code. The function's name is evaluate test score. You need these opening close parentheses along with the colons. Now, I'm going to need something to hold the number or score we get on a test. So what would be a concept we learned? Avanish, a variable, yep. So I'm going to say our test score, we received, how about a 85 on a test, 85%. Now we want to convert score to a letter grade. So now this is where we are going to use conditionals. So what I'm going to do to see if I got an A, B, or C, or a D letter grade is I'm going to say if the test score we got is greater than 90. So if we got the opening close parentheses and then we got our condition inside, this is the condition which we're looking for. If this condition is met, then we will run whatever code is inside of this indentation. So this is being read as if the test score variable has a value greater than 90, then as a colon, then we have to say print out you received a. You received an A.
You should do if test score is greater than or equal to, because they still count 90 also and above.
Yeah, so we could do greater than or equal to. If you want to go more specific, you can say if the test score we received is greater than or equal to 90, then you received an A. Now, if this first condition is not met, this is where something else comes in, called an else if. This is what an else if is. I'm going to write it out first. So else if.
LF, right?
Yep. Oh, yeah, so we're not doing Java. Thank you, Anish. Yeah, so elif. There we go. So else if our test score is greater than or equal to 80, then we'll print out and say you received a B. Now, what this is saying right here is, if this first condition is not met, then look at the else if. The way we write an else if is saying elif. Look at this second condition, and if that's met, then run the code inside of there. Now, would I use an else if or an if for our third conditional to look at if they got a C? Yep, so we would use an elif. If the test score they received is greater than or equal to 70, then we'll print out you received a C. So look at how we're going through this, right? We got if the test score, the variable value is greater than 90, then run this code. Otherwise, if the test score variable value is greater than 80, then run this code. Print out, we got our letter B.
I don't think you should like put an exclamation mark for the C, because that's not really like that much of a surprise.
So yep, so we're saying else if the test score is greater than 70, then you got to see. And then what we'll do is finally, the third part of an else if else statement is the else, which means if none of these conditions are met, then we'll run whatever code is inside of this else statement. We'll say you did pretty bad. So looking at this conditionals we got set up, once more, our first condition is checking if the score is greater than 90, then we'll print out you got an A. Otherwise, if the score is greater than 80, but less than 90, then we'll print out you got a B. Then we'll say if the score is greater than 70, but less than 80, then you got a C. Otherwise, if none of these three conditions are met, you did pretty bad. So with our test score of 85, when I hit the run button, what should we see printed out in our console?
You received a B.
Yep. So let's hit run. Oh, and remember, although we've created our function, we have to call our function outside of the function. What this is doing is going to say, hey, run whatever code is inside of this function. So I'll call the function. We often forget to do this with the open and close parentheses. There we go. And now if I hit run, there we go. We see we received a score of B. And if I change this to a 95, what would I see printed out?
You received A.
Yep. Everybody else agree? Different thoughts? Yep, Kathleen received an A. If I hit run, there we go. We received an A because we had 95. What if I go a 45? What would we see printed out?
You did pretty bad.
Yep, and Avanish, why would that be?
Like 40, even though 45 is not even on the list, like you just look at the else, like the else statement you did last resort, and it was you did pretty bad. So just print out that.
Exactly.
Nothing else of it's met.
Yep, so none of these conditions are being met, right? 45 is not greater than 90, 45 is not greater than 80, and 45 is not greater than 70. Now, if none of these are met, that means that we have to go towards the else statement, which is checking for everything else if none of these conditions are met, and then running whatever code is inside of there. There we go. So that's a recap of, we got a taste today of 3 important concepts. We got to check out our test score. This is a variable. We got to see how we can create functions, which are holding all of our code, the variables, and then conditionals. Now, next week, we will be utilizing all 3 of these concepts in order to create a bigger project. We will be potentially creating some type of quiz game where we will be asking the user for input and then looking at using conditionals to compare answers and printing out results, keeping track of some score as well. So that was a quick recap on functions, variables, and conditionals today, along with being able to go with your partners, talking about how we can see all this stuff being applied in real life as well. Any change in the text? And yes, as always, guys, this link will be posted in the Google Classroom afterwards. So if you'd like to go, you can go and check back any code which you might have missed. Alrighty, guys. Well, then that brings us till the end for the 3rd week of our Elk Grove Library Technology Programs and Introduction to Programming. Thank you guys once again for coming out here today. Hopefully you guys had a fun time learning about the new concepts and are excited for next week where we will be creating an actual project. Stay tuned for that, guys, and I hope to catch you guys on next week's Hack Club and Introduction to Programming. See you guys. Take care.
Thank you.